Again, good afternoon. The Organizational Development Standing Committee of the Richmond City Council will now come to order. Mr. Clerk, if you would move with us to address the minutes from the previous meeting.
Madam Chair, the minutes to be approved are from the Monday, July 7th, 2025 Organizational Development Standing Committee meeting and the Tuesday, September 2nd, 2025 Organizational Development Standing Committee meeting. If there are no corrections or amendments, then those minutes will be approved as presented. Those minutes have been approved.
Thank you, Mr. Clark. We'll now move on to reports for this evening, starting with the FY 2027 competitive grant-making process. Ms. Popovich, welcome.
Thank you for having me, Council President Newbill. Council, really excited to be here today. I'm Amy Popovich, GCIO for Human Services. I'm going to review some work that we've done over the past couple of months in partnership with our shared grant consultant and with Council Chief of Staff. I'll begin by just naming that this is a significant shift in the grant-making process here at the city, to really focus on increasing impact in our communities and to really ensure best practices in grant making. We have a basic framework today that we've updated, and I really want to make sure to hear from you all at the end of this presentation. This is what our framework is today, but there certainly is opportunities for updates and for feedback from you all. I'm coming to you first now ahead of lots of public communication so we can make sure that we're on the same page. We'll continue engagement in the coming weeks with our community partners as well. Next slide. Oh, I have a clicker. Wonderful. This is my first presentation, so I will get used to the clicker. Let's see if this works. All right, great. Here's a slide just to level set on what the existing grant making process is, just so we can all hear it today. So currently, our organization manages 70 individual organizations with 70 different contracts. They're managed by a myriad of staff throughout the city, human services, budget, city attorney's office, CAO staff, all who do other work, all who do this work on top of their regular responsibilities. The city works with grantees on the scope of services and performance measures, and the city budget cycle and process result in a nearly 11th month process from the time of the initial application to executing the contract and receiving those funds. So why change now? This really represents an opportunity to align with the mayor's vision and action plan, and also with council priorities to really focus on the vision of the city of Richmond, a city where all people and places thrive. Also, we looked into some research of what are some of the best practices, and increasingly more grant making across the nation in both public and private institutions are using grant making partners. There's some examples of this in cities like Cincinnati, who partner with United Way to make grants. A city of Chicago uses 2 different foundations to make their grants for the city of Chicago. And we here at the city, we've had 3 different experiences with these funds: Health Equity Fund, Positive Youth Development Fund, and the Early Childhood Care and Education Trust Fund that have used similar models. Our current internal capacity really limits our ability to provide adequate support and provide the technical assistance that we'd want to give to our grantees. There's a lot of involvement that goes in here in key parts throughout the year cycle, making it really difficult and pretty inefficient for city staff to be able to manage this. There have been a variety of roles here at the city involved in the process, as I've said, but no one full-time employee that's really dedicated to this process. It's actually going to be cost effective. It's going to be cheaper to use our grant-making partners than it would be to staff up inside City Hall. Our grant-making consultant estimated it would take about $1 million to fully staff up the staff that we would need to be able to do this level of support. And additionally, in response to the non-departmental audit last year, it was estimated that there would need to be 5 additional FTEs in the city to be able to do this process. So while we will need to support grant-making partners expanding capacity to run this process, it will cost significantly less than it would be to hire city staff to do the same process. All right, audit considerations. Imagine many of you are aware that there was an audit done here by our city auditor in February of 2025 on the way we currently do our grant making process. And it was there was 9 different indicators here. Two I highlight here that really point to the need for additional rigor and an improved process. This first point around the total amount available for charitable grant funds, not knowing that at the beginning of the process. So as it currently stands, administration staff review applications and prepare recommendations for available funding before knowing what the actual grant money that will be available, because it's before the budget process. That means organizations who are applying in October have no guaranteed amount of what they'll be approved for. However, in the new process, grantees will know the total available amount to them because it won't happen until that fiscal year, until after the budget cycle. That second process, or that second indicator here on the audit, really talks to needing access to professional capacity and expertise, and that's exactly what this model would provide. The auditor noticed it was a decentralized process, again, across multiple departments doing their best, but none focusing on this work specifically. All right, so the framework for the new process, what is it? It is competitively identifying grant-making partners across 4 clear focus areas that really align with the mayor's pillars and also with council priorities. Here are the 4 categories in front of you: children and families, health, economic mobility, and arts and culture. So how does this work, and what would it look like for budget allocation here? So council retains, of course, the full budget authority. The mayor would propose the budget and the allocations to each priority focus area and the named organizational partner, and council will have final approval of allocations to each of the priority areas through the normal budget process. The city maintains a strategic direction through focused areas and specific indicators that are going to drive this process. Just a quick note on how the city also manages some of our quasi-governmental agencies and city-driven initiatives, and those would continue to be city-led. So just an example, our quasi-government organizations includes organizations like Richmond Behavioral Health Authority, the GRTC, Richmond Ambulance Authority, for example. Next slide. So just a few benefits of the model. This would really bring experienced grant-making organizations who can provide technical assistance and capacity building that we can't really offer. It will also significantly cut the timeline between application and decision by about 2/3. It will be able to create a more responsive experience for our grantees and more timely project implementation. So instead of applying in October and not finalizing a contract till September, the process would be about 3 months, July to September. It also frees up our city staff to be able to focus on their core functions and provide a better oversight of the direct contracts. We have staff who are pivoting between their full-time priorities and then also the needs of the process. We have some of our legal team who are pivoting between major economic development contracts and then working on these 70 individual contracts as well. Grant partners will embed equity frameworks and community engagement in ways that really strengthen our process. And in addition to the interim updates on investments, you'll receive annual reports out from these key indicators and outcomes that we are expecting from our partners. All right, so what's next? We will continue to have ongoing communication with our stakeholders. Last week, as you all were made aware, we made sure to communicate to our current and past grant funders that the process was changing. We're going to host this month a meeting with key stakeholders to find out information about what it would look like for this competitive process. Along with, we will also have meetings with those previous and current grantees so we make sure that they're up to date on the information there. We're also working to develop the priority area framework with both key indicators and outcomes for each of those 4 areas. And we're working with our city partners here on working through the competitively identified process to make sure that we're still on track for identifying those subject matter experts for the fiscal year 27 timeline. We'll keep you all up to date along the way. So in summary, looking forward to this discussion. Want to hear your thoughts and suggestions for how we go about this. Your input will help to shape the implementation moving forward. We're committed to a thorough process. This work and supporting our nonprofits is such an important work that we do. And we're going to evaluate it. So each year that we do this, certainly next year, we'll evaluate the process to make sure we're on track. I'd love to start out the discussion, if we can, by hearing from you all on how do we best ensure that your strategic priorities areas are reflected in this framework. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Popovich. Members, are there questions at this time? Councilwoman Trammell?
Thank you. Did you say something about the Richmond Ambulance Authority?
Yes, I did. I was talking about the larger non-departmental budget, which I believe is close to $40 million, includes the contracts we make to our quasi-governmental partners. That's not going to be this process. We'll continue to maintain the contracts we have with those quasi-governmental partners like RAA in the same way we have done in the past.
Right, thank you.
Mhm.
Thank you.
Councilwoman Gibson?
Thank you, Madam President. Thank you. A couple of questions. I guess my first question is if you could talk a little bit about the items, this process was, I believe, came through an audit that identified issues in how the grants were allocated. There was, it was identified that some of the grantees did not meet the criteria for receiving funds. And so I was hoping to hear more specifically about how the new process will address those items. And then also, I was hoping to hear more about the foundation consultant that has been selected. How much does it cost us? What is the actual number of the cost for that? And what are the methods that are going to be employed to provide transparency and underscoring the importance of ensuring that there aren't conflicts of interest as the grants are awarded?
Sure. I'll try to get to all three of those. First one, our consultant is Kelly Chopis. Believe she's online. She is with us for 2 months. It's a shared contract between council and the city. Kelly comes to us with experience of running one of the large philanthropic organizations that's here locally. All right, I think that answers your question. Amount of time, cost, and who the consultant is.
I'm sorry, can you repeat once again what the cost is?
$25,000.
For the 2 months?
That's right.
Okay, and what is the plan after the 2 months?
We'll assess and see what that time, if we need to extend it or not, but we're doing our best to make sure we get the bulk of that work during that time. But we wanted to make sure we started out with what we knew we need and then decide from there if we need more time after that.
Okay.
Sure. And the second was about, essentially, audit highlighted some things and areas that really needed to improve, and how does this really address that? We've actually looked at a couple of different models. How would it look like to really improve the overall outcomes? Like, that's our overall goal. How are we improving the outcomes for our city here? And certainly doing it in a way that is making sure that we're hitting all of our points and that we would get clean audits. So we looked at a couple of different models. One was we could give all of our funds to another organization. Some cities have done that to like one large grant organization. In those examples, that tended to be more of a hands-off process than I think we want, where those larger organizations then modeled the funding and strategic priorities after their own priorities, and we want to be able to model it after city priorities. Another example was we could create our own nonprofit, essentially, and really build that out. That would also be time intensive and cost intensive. But the model that we selected involves up to 4 key subject matter experts. So I think part of what identified in the audit is really needing subject matter expertise here, really making sure that this process is handled by organizations that run grant processes a lot, that have the systems, the data, the tools to be able to make sure that those are really effective effective, so that we avoid any duplication of funding, and so that, our organizations are communicated to very clearly. Certainly the contracts we have with those organizations will make sure that both our grant making organizations and the grantees include that same clause we do now about subject to audit. So it meets both things at the same time. It increases the ability to have those key indicators and outcomes for every organization, but every contract, again, both to the subject matter experts and also the grantees, will have the information there about subject to audit as needed. I think you had a third question. Do you mind repeating that third question?
Yes,
Yeah.
I mean, so my other questions are specific to conflicts of interest and also related to that and the audit. One of the audit items was in that there was policy that define the process, and I think that the policy could also include requirements to ensure that we don't have issues with conflicts of interest. And so I'm wondering it would be helpful to hear the goals of the policy that are planned to be established and the time frame for those, and if there are other thoughts in terms of the immediate needs of assuring that there is a transparent, conflict-free process in place.
Sure. And conflict of interest, I've got some esteemed colleagues here taking notes, so we make sure we incorporate some of this. But one of the reasons to have grant-making partners is to separate the process a little bit from the city or council processes, to be able to have those experts really score based on specific criteria. And again, there's 4 core areas. So the aim is to hire grant-making experts who also know that content area very well too, to be able to create a scoring to say what this looks like. But I think the concept of putting in a specific conflict of interest clause, we can definitely make sure that's a part of that too.
Yeah. And I'm sorry, just to, in terms of the conflict of interest, I mean, I don't know that separating it from the city, I mean, we have great people that work at the city, right? And we're doing good things. So that's not my concern. I mean, I do think that, kind of bluntly said, many of the same folks that contribute to nonprofits are the same folks that contribute to campaigns. And so I'm wanting to understand how, given that we're having a nonprofit, how are we going to ensure that there are not conflicts of interest, given the overlap of political donations and philanthropic donations.
Yeah, thanks for teasing that out a little bit more. That seems like very important language to put in our contracts, and I think we'll take note of that to make sure that we have clear language there, so that specifies, what would need to be required for anyone reviewing contracts to be able to sign what a conflict of interest form is, to make sure that doesn't happen. Yep.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councilman Breton?
Thank you. I was going to ask if you are able at this point to guess whether these 4 budget bucket sizes will be based, on roughly the amount of money that we spent last time on each of these bucket sizes, or how we will go about determining what those budget sizes will be.
And the budget process will follow the similar budget process of previous years. So the mayor will include these 4 categories in his budget. That is one of the things we're looking at for these 4 categories. So we really tried to align the categories certainly on strategic work. That was an initiative of the city, but also, as I mentioned, the mayor's key pillars and priorities I've heard from council here. And that will be one of the indicators we look at for sure, which is what has previous funding gone to in these different buckets. I think we'll also look forward to say, hey, are there strategic initiatives and strategic work we're trying to accomplish across these buckets?
And can you clarify how the set of objectives and goals that each of these stewards will have? Can you clarify how those will be defined, when they'll be defined, and whether or not that'll be something that council will have to approve or something administration generates?
Yeah, there's the way we're starting with what are the indicators and outcomes are by asking subject matter experts both in the city and in some of our quasi-governmental agencies to say, hey, can you help us create some of these drafts for what they will look like? That's also certainly can follow up with if you all have thoughts on what some of those will be, we can have input. So council's ability to have input is now and later this week if you want to have individual meetings. But we're setting up that framework. That's the process we're identifying right now. That's what we're working to with our consultant on as well.
Yeah, I'm just going to comment. I actually am very optimistic about this process. I'm really grateful to see that the city is taking our audit results seriously, and creating new processes that are more transparent, do have better accountability, more measurable. So I consider this a very good step in terms of our, fiscal stewardship of the city. So I'm really glad to see this type of effort.
Ms. Popovich, and yes, I have a question, but Councilwoman Jones next.
Thank you very much, Council President. Madam President, I'm sorry. My question was, with the 4 entities that are going to pretty much manage, how are you factoring into the fact that if, let's just say one of the organizations were a previous awardee, how are you factoring that into them now being the organization that will be dispersing funds? And are you incorporating part of the fact that they now won't be able to apply for funds, but then also you will have to pay them to manage? Like, what is that going to look like? And what does that process entail? Is it, simple as an administrative fee, or is it, well, let's just say I was getting $50,000 and now I'm doing this process. What and how is that going to affect my organization? And just making sure that, back to that transparency piece, that we are keeping that, at the top, and making sure that we're not saying, well, we're going to give you $50,000 to manage this process because the city can't.
Yep. So the overall process will be an RFP process, a request for procurement. And there are very, very specific rules and guidelines about conflict of interest, even when you go in it, that no one touching or discussing anything related to the project can have any can result in any award at the end. So just like we would for any RFP, we're following those same kind of guidelines. But we have done some research on what people might know as administrative cost, also known as the capacity that an organization needs to run the grant making. Ranges for that are 7 to 15% or so, but we're already planning on capping that administrative fee around, that's the draft right now is around 10%. So it would be the same, administrative fee, whether for whatever bucket, whatever of the priority focus areas a grant making organization is doing, they'll get the same across that. Does that answer both your questions? Yeah.
Oh, there you go. Thanks. We having technical difficulties. Yeah, it does. But I think yes, but I was just wondering, is it going to be made clear then that you won't be able to both apply and apply?
Correct.
I mean, like, there's not a double dip here in a sense of like, you can apply for funds, but you can also apply for this RFP.
Correct. Yes. The organization who, if selected to be the grant making, organization, they would not then also apply to themselves to get money for something.
Well, no,
Correct.
they might apply to another bucket, but I'm just asking. Okay, but thank you.
Yeah, no, that's good. I mean, all of that, we would want an organization's role to be grant making and not grant receiving for these funds. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And I think this is great. And I think, like, to my colleague's point, just about the transparent piece, it just gives us a chance to really look at it overall and really ensure. I mean, I think I would love to, as a part of, like you said, the process, really get a sense of what the criteria is, what folks will, so when we're looking at who was awarded, making sure that it was like, it didn't change dramatically, or that it was really meant to do what it was set out to do, and making sure that we also see those folks who haven't historically been funded in a way, but the process does not become more of a barrier.
Yep, For sure. And again, we'll evaluate, we'll be able to see, of course, you all will know, who competitively is awarded for these grant making organizations. And then also when they award, we'll know. And we have built-in evaluation process. So this doesn't mean this is the process for the next forever. We'll be able to evaluate this in a year or two.
Thank you. Vice President Jordan.
Thank you so much. And yeah, it's definitely gratifying to see after, I think, several years in conversations, each budget, that this is a challenging aspect for us. So excited to try a new approach. My question had to do with making sure that all of our different grant funds, we're analyzing the applicants across the board because we've got the Health Equity Fund, its own unique thing. Now we've got a new bucket for health. And I'm sure there are other agencies. I know we have a Green Grants Fund. So just trying to make sure that, I don't know, what is the plan for aligning all of those applicants and making sure that folks aren't being accepted by 3 and then some other worthy organizations getting 0? Thanks.
Sure. I'll answer that a couple of ways. One, that will be part of the contract with the grant making experts to make sure that there's some level of understanding of who's funding who, so that, to your point, we don't just fund for organizations and what that will look like. So that'll be a part of the process. The other part is that we're making sure in each of these 4 core areas that we're defining that pretty clearly. So what falls under what? For example, climate, right, is going to fall under the health category. But that's so that if you're an organization and you want to know where do I plug in, we'll have some clear definitions under each of the 4 so that organizations will kind of know, hey, if my focus area is on, early childhood, I know that I apply for this bucket. I apply for early childhood and I don't apply for health. So we'll have some clear definitions around that to really help that out. The other thing I'll just talk about, I talked about quasi-governmental contracts. There'll also be a specific bucket for strategic initiatives, like, for example, the Eviction Prevention Fund or the Family Crisis Fund that will be still maintained by the city, which will also then have a competitive process for those organizations. So some of those initiatives will also have a slightly different process than the other ones as well.
Thank you. Well, one of my questions you've answered already was in terms of the approximate administrative cost, and somewhere between 7 and 15, but looking more like 10%. The selection criteria for the external grant making partners demonstrated grant making capacity and infrastructure, correct?
Yes, correct.
Okay, that they have the infrastructure. I mean, that's part of why we are looking, because we are clear that that infrastructure is needed to cover a variety of things, as well as back office supports.
Yes, exactly.
Okay.
Yeah, I'll just summarize by saying that's what this is about. How do we have the best outcomes for our community because we don't have enough staff capacity, and we want to be able to have subject matter experts who are reviewing these grant applications.
All right. Thank you, Ms. Popovich. Greatly appreciate the presentation. There may be other questions coming to you. Members, at this time, if there are no other questions, well, if there are additional questions, we can just direct those to you.
Yes,
then,
please.
If there are no other questions, we'd like to say thank you, and certainly for your due diligence in looking at options that allow us to more effectively really provide through this non-departmental grant-making process, a process that speaks to what the findings were, speaks to the need for additional staffing back, all of those kind of things. Really greatly appreciate that. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
With that, members, we will move now to our second presentation, which is our draft legislative proposal for the 2026 Virginia General Assembly. Welcome, Deb.
All right. Good afternoon, Madam President, members of Council. Thank you so very much for having me today. My name is Devin Cabot. I'm with the firm Two Capitals Consulting. We were selected to be your legislative and lobbying consultants representing the city in front of the General Assembly. And with me today, I have my colleague, Maddie Bussey, and we have one more colleague, my counterpart, Ed Reed, who some of you know. And I'm delighted today. We've been on the ground for about 35 days with this city, and I'm delighted that we have compiled a very first draft of a legislative agenda and a couple of slides to go with it. We've had the opportunity to meet with almost all of you, either by phone or Zoom, to kind of introduce ourselves and get a little bit kind of feedback from you on priorities you want to see in the package. But this is, of course, an ongoing conversation, so we look forward to continuing the conversation as we move forward here. Okay, so to start off, not surprisingly, the broad themes that we heard in all of our conversations with you are the following. We heard a lot about housing affordability and everything that goes into that. We heard a significant amount about K-12 education, specifically around the funding formula and school capital improvements. We heard a lot about infrastructure funding, maintenance, and modernization, whether that is for schools, roads, or water and sewer infrastructure. And we heard about community building, building strong neighborhoods, making sure the city is seen as the vibrant, strong place that it is, ensuring that we have high quality of life for residents, and also some challenges around code enforcement also came up. So what I did here on this slide is I tried to consolidate the top issues that came up in most of the conversations. There are 5 legislative items here. The next slide will have the budgetary items, and then we'll go on to continue to talk about other items that either will have a policy position or that we're still researching. We just don't have enough information yet to put it in the package. I'm under the impression that we want to limit this list to 5 total priority items. So at some point, I will need your feedback to figure out which ones of these we want to really focus on for the 2026 legislative session. So the first item that came up in a lot of conversations is the Faith in Housing Bill, the Yes in God's Backyard. This is the piece of legislation that will streamline the permitting process for religious organizations to build multifamily affordable units on their land. I heard from many folks about the anti-rent gouging efforts that have been happening at the General Assembly for the last couple of years. This legislation gives a locality the authority to establish by city ordinance a program to oversee and limit abusive rent increases within the city limits. This is one that came up that was also in your package last year, LOOP, the idea of the long-term owner occupancy program. There was study language put in the 2025 Appropriations Act to look at this more thoroughly. From what I can tell as of today, that study and the report from that study have not been completed. So continuing to monitor that and make sure that that moves forward so we could look at instituting a LOOP program in the future. Financing and Bonding Authority for Public Facilities. This is a program that has sunset that would allow Richmond, amongst a few other localities, to issue bonds for public facilities and then retain the authority to keep the sales and use tax to then pay back those bonds over time. And then the 5th one I put up here is the school construction legislation that would allow for a 1% sales tax increase through local referendum in order to fund the construction and modernization of public schools. The 2 budgetary items that we spoke about at length with various members are, of course, funding for the water treatment plant. I got these numbers from the administration, so $40 million request for both fiscal year 27 and 28. And then combined sewer outflow. I'm under the impression that the state has already designated approximately $100 million to the city for this project, but there's a large delta there. So making a strong request here for $100 million in the first year and $150 million in the second year of the next biennial budget to support the implementation of the plan that DEQ has already approved on CSO upgrades. So perhaps I should stop there. Those are like the top items. Would you like me to actually proceed through the policy positions at this point as well?
Yes.
Okay. So the legislative draft that you have before you has several pages of priority policy positions. These are items that were either in your package last year or items that came up in our conversations that were didn't make the top 5 list, basically. And so you'll see everything in here from additional affordable housing tools like LIHTC, and the state code around short-term rentals. We had a lot of conversation about hold harmless and at-risk funding, childcare subsidies, those types of issues in the education space. There was a lot in your package last year in the health and human services space around maternal health care, mental health supports, funding for the CSBs, Marcus Alert, addiction treatment, those types of issues. There is a few items in here pertaining to public safety, including 599 funding and gun violence prevention issues. On the economic development front, we have mostly items around zoning density and land use, a little bit around tourism as well. In the transportation space, we touch on multimodal connectivity, speed cameras, and road maintenance. In the administration of government space, pilot payment in lieu of taxes from the state to the locality is a big issue that has a prominent place in that section of the package, I included language around local control of local issues, as well as opposition to unfunded mandates from the state. And then the last thing I added was I heard from many of you wanting to work collaboratively with regional partners to make sure we were reflecting a lot of the regional priorities in the package. And so I listed some of them there, but welcome additional feedback on others we could add to that list to put in the package. And then these are issues that we've heard from you all that we just haven't had time to fully vet. We're still researching them. Again, 35 days on the job, so we have a lot of research to still do on some of these. That includes campaign finance reform, charter changes, the makeup of commissions and authorities, the eviction diversion program, the health equity trust fund, inclusionary zoning, issues around placement of recovery residences, the notion that city council vacancies would be filled through a special election instead of an appointment process, transparency in FOIA, and then tax policy issues around fairness and the rollback rate. And then the last slide I have here is just a timeline going forward. We're here on the 6th, but the next item in the timeline here is on October 28th. We will be hosting the state delegation at the Valentine Museum for a legislative summit to discuss these items with them and get their feedback. And I'm really hoping that that is a two-way conversation where we can both hear legislation that they intend to bring forward, but also, instill in them our priorities in the city package. And then on November 3rd, there will be a resolution introduced at the council special meeting prior to this meeting of the actual resolution with the final package in it. And then on November 10th, that is when council will vote on the final resolution. What you can't see down there is that session starts January 14th. It's a little bit late this year, but it's a 60-day session, meaning that we will be doing a brand new biennial budget. So we will have, of course, a new administration and new members of the General Assembly likely. So it will be an exciting and robust time in our work. And with that, I'm here for questions, feedback.
Ms. Gabbard, thank you for this draft and the timeline. There are, I suspect, a few questions, and I'll start with Councilman Breton.
Can you explain the different type of treatment that we should expect between our top priorities and our policy positions? I mean, there's a very long list of policy positions. Are they going to get any attention? Like what happens to all of those?
Sure. Policy priorities, I really approach them in two ways. The first being just a blanket statement that we can use to better understand how City Council would feel about a bill. So, right, there will be 3,000 bills that come before the General Assembly in a 60-day period. And sometimes we'll just need to be able to figure out, where does this fall? We know we have a policy on no unfunded mandates. And so we can start there in our kind of analysis of the legislation. There's also things on that list that do have some momentum from previous sessions, that I think bills that will get introduced on those topics that we can then proactively support, but it doesn't make it into one of the top 5 issues that we are asking our state delegation to, spearhead for us.
And are we going to also, I don't know, be asked or required to reduce that longer list to a shorter list, to keep?
No, I don't think so, right? As a local government, care about a lot of things. A lot of things impact your residents. And so I think just reducing the priority items is in order. However, the policy positions can be as long as we need to make sure we capture everything we may see in front of the General Assembly come January.
All right. Would you say that what's a useful deadline for us to collect more information and clarity around all those other policy positions? I'm looking at the date here. Like, which of these dates should I be thinking of for deadlines to get you more information or clarity?
Do you mean on this list of
that
things
longer
to
list,
still be researched?
or even the other ones where you had said, "Oh, we have a thing about road maintenance," right? Well, I can help you clarify. Oh, what that means is maintenance first, or using bike lane and parking lane miles in the formula. Like, I can help get you more materials, but I want to know, what the right timeline is to give myself the deadline for that.
Mr. Breton, you're asking relative to the policy positions.
Yeah. Yeah, like how soon should me and my office be getting you more clarity around all those policy positions to help you understand? Just to clarify what that is.
Sure. I think if possible, before our conversation with the state delegation on October 29th, just so that we're going in there all on the same page on kind of how we're going to talk about those issues with them. But technically, we could still make changes right up until November. So we can add and tweak language. There's some things in here, that we may just want to tweak a little bit of language here and there. There are things that I think, you're going to probably want to get me additional information to flesh out. So I would say a good goal would be to have it before, so we can use it in our October 29th meeting. So a little bit before that. Thank you.
Councilwoman Gibson.
Thank you, Madam President. I have a question. It might be more appropriate for our leadership. Thank you for the presentations. It's helpful to have. In my conversation about the legislative priorities, one of the things I emphasized was inclusionary zoning. In our Richmond 300 plan, which was adopted initially in 2020 and then a revised version in 2023, on page 178 of that document, we set as an objective 14.3, it states create 10,000 new affordable housing units for low and very low income households over the next 10 years. So that was stated as an objective. And the third item on that list, again, in the Richmond 300 plan, was to lobby, it says, lobby the General Assembly to give Richmond powers under 15.2-2304, which allows localities to adopt mandatory inclusionary zoning programs. And so my question is, given that this was identified in the Richmond 300 and then was adopted by the body, I believe we are required or beholden to include inclusionary zoning in this list of priorities to be in compliance with the document that was adopted by council.
Let me say just my recollection of our efforts and our work and our commitment, inclusionary zoning would be included, notwithstanding Richmond 300. I mean, this body committed to that in the last iteration of the legislative, at least, if not the very last, before. And so I certainly would like to see it included, but we can, we still have opportunity to bring back.
Okay, good.
Yes.
Okay, so, so I just want to make it very clear, I think it's important, and I do want to see the, inclusionary zoning as a priority, that we include in our legislative agenda this year. Thank you.
And I understood that to mean as one of our top 5.
Yes.
Any other questions or comments at this time? So Ms. Cabot, you will round the wagons back. Can't tell if you're lit up or not. I see it spread there. Ms. Gibson, that's okay. Did you have another question? Okay. Ms. Cabot, so you will expect us to round the wagons back to you in terms of any additional information or priorities, and even some that might nest under the existing ones here. Because I'm not sure inclusion has to be separate when we're talking about housing. So, and you would like to have that back before the 29th, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
I think that would allow us to have a more robust and complete conversation with our state delegation on the 29th. And so
Okay.
there are a few items in the still to be researched list that have been mentioned, and I will follow up with you to get more information on those. But I'm available to meet with you anytime if somebody has a new idea that hasn't been mentioned yet.
Thank you. With that, members, if you would follow up with Ms. Cabot with any questions, any recommendations, so that we can move from this first draft iteration to the next draft iteration and finalization, that would be appreciated. And thank you so much. I'm looking forward. This year is the first year that we have the concerted collaboration between council and administration in terms of the legislative agenda. So I'm looking forward to us working in that way, plus inclusive of schools and the agenda there. So thank you.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. We're privileged to be here. So thank you.
Thank you. At this time, members, we will proceed with reports of standing committees. And so That's it. Say again? I didn't hear. I'm sorry, Miss. Okay. Okay. So at this point, we would have GovOps.
Do you still have some? Show it. I know it.
I'm so sorry. I was not ready to jump right to GovOps. If another committee chair is ready, otherwise, I just
Sure.
Thanks.
And I was looking based on, we don't have our Chair for Education and Human Services, Finance and Economic Development, but I do believe we have reports I'm looking now, yes, have reports that have been prepared or summaries, correct? Mr. Perkins?
Yes, ma'am.
If
That was
you would
provided
come-
to everybody in writing.
Okay. Anything in particular you want to highlight in either of those at this time? Okay, everyone has received the document with the reports. And so thank you, Mr. Perkins, for your due diligence. Greatly appreciated. Land use, housing, and transportation, you're going to have the document we've received from Mr. Perkins as a summary. Public safety, Ms. Trammell, you'll be utilizing the document that Mr. Perkins prepared as well, correct? To give us the overview. Yes? You said yes. Okay. And then Ms. Jordan?
Thank you so much, President Newbell. We had a extensive conversation in our last GovOps meeting, which unfortunately was so extensive we ran out of time to actually vote on the legislation. So At our next GovOps meeting, we are going to be flipping the agenda so that the legislation gets voted on first. And we have we have a FOIA related paper, another transparency related paper, and welcome everyone who would like to participate in GovOps. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, members. And again, Mr. Perkins, thank you for the summaries that have been provided. And I would draw our attention to those that have been submitted by email to everyone. And if there are any questions, you can follow up with the chairs and/or direct back to our council chief of staff. With that, that concludes the agenda for this meeting. The meeting now stands adjourned.